Have one theist waiting to call. That's Dave from Sturgeon Bay. Thanks for waiting.
Oh, thanks much, Matt. Appreciate it.
How you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Are you guys having good weather? Because we had rain for like 4 or 5 days, and now it's finally beautiful.
It's turning the corner. It's getting better. Green Bay is always about 10 degrees warmer, so that's not saying a lot because that's still cold up there. So.
All right. So you had a question for us about kind of bridging the divide between something related to truth. So go ahead.
It wasn't really necessarily bridging the divide. It was just, I've watched the show for about a year and a half or so, and I was, I was raised Catholic, and then I became an agnostic, and then through a series of events, I became a Christian, and am still, and I believe the same things that I think anybody at least was an agnostic, probably the same as an atheist at the time, which that I just believed in evolution and believed in all the things that I think that you normally would logically. But over time, as I began questioning, I came to. I'm not going to go into my background, but I guess it gets to my bottom line question is that it doesn't seem, as I've listened to and tried to understand the method of logic and how and all the conversations that I've heard over the past year plus, is that I've come to a brick wall where it doesn't seem like it's possible. It's just an impossible conversation because there's no way of proving, scientifically almost. There's just no way of proving that God exists other than the anecdotal of my experience and the anecdotal of other people's experiences. And they're not whacked out people. They're are individuals that, and I've met people from all over the world, and particularly the people from the Middle East.
So Dave?
Even more, yeah, go ahead.
So if there's something that we can't demonstrate, should anybody believe it?
Well, it's demonstrated. That's just it. Am I using the right word by anecdotal? People's experiences, the things that they've related to me, is that the correct term? Because that's what seems to be tangible. The only tangible thing is that I have, over the past, now it's been 40 years, and the people that I've met over those decades are very credible people, well balanced, mature.
Sure, but does that tell you anything at all? So I've met plenty of people who I consider to be truthful, and they tell me stories, and I don't think they're lying. But what I don't think is that there's any good reason to believe what they're portraying is real. For example, I've heard people tell me they encountered a ghost. I believe that they had an experience that they are relaying as, I had an encounter with a ghost. But that doesn't mean we have good evidence to believe that they actually had an encounter with a ghost. Because people can be wrong, and people can, have dreams and false memories and all sorts of, we don't have enough information to say that the most reasonable conclusion is that they're right. So given that, you're right in pointing out that there's a lot of anecdotal claims, but there's a lot of anecdotal claims for a lot of different religions. And so even if you were desperately trying to, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that there's something to all of this, what can you determine about what that actual something is? There's a number of different possibilities. Either these are mistakes in the way humans think and process information, or there's something potentially real and supernatural about it. But if we apply that method honestly and fairly across the entirety of human claims about experiences, then we would be in a position where we would be simultaneously forced to accept mutually exclusive claims. We would have to believe in the Jesus claims, in the Allah claims, in Scientology and Hinduism, and that demonstrates that the method that we're using to assess these claims is fundamentally flawed because it doesn't lead us to identify which of a number of competing hypotheses is most likely to be correct.
Well, it seems that in 30 years' experience so far, and at some point, it's kind of like the old, learning basic logic back in college. All the beans in the barrel are white, but maybe there's a black bean, and you keep pulling. So it's inductive, and I look at all of the conversations I've had over these years, and like I say, they are very credible, well balanced people, and I think the consistency I've seen is that their lives were inexplicably radically changed.
Why?
From a very bad situation to
why is it inexplicable? That doesn't people change. Irrespective of religious views all the time. To say that it's inexplicable, and first of all, would be an acknowledgement that you therefore can have no explanation that you should then accept. But even sticking with your one black bean in a jar thing, there's a bit of inference that takes place. You keep pulling and you never get a black bean. You could possibly infer that there's not one, but at a minimum, you can't be justified in believing there is one. And so when you look at, you talked about, the bulk of experience. Well, the bulk of experience is of all the times people have claimed that a God or anything supernatural was real, not once has anybody been able to verify this for any of the supernatural claims.
And I don't know, and that's why I say it's impossible. It's an impossible conversation, it seems, because how do you ever prove that all the people that I've met, and a good number of them, are telling the truth? That's
a shifting of the burden of proof. That's a shifting.
Possible,
Dave.
And it's also, I was going to say, it's also, a bit of a fallacy simply to say, because a thing has had a positive impact on the lives of its believers, therefore it is likely to be true, has no bearing, really. It's on the truth or the falsity of it. It simply means that when you consider all of the factors involved in religion, particularly when you've got something like Christianity, which has this full support of the society, our society, for example, here, it's the degree of social reinforcement, the fact that churches as entities build communities among people, and these are things that are designed to be like social hubs that are meant to make you feel like you belong somewhere. If you were previously somebody who never had that sense in your life, they provide these outlets. There are any number of reasons why religion can give people happy feelings and make them feel positive where before they were unhappy, but that still doesn't really have any bearing on its claims about supernatural realms and deities and what have you. It's an entirely separate question. So I think that when you say that it's an impossible discussion, it sounds to me like what you're doing is that you're on the one hand you've got the discussion about can religion be a positive force in people's lives. And then on the other hand, you've got the discussion, do actual gods exist? I think those they're related questions, but at the same time, each one sort of has its own set of answers that don't really have any bearing on the other. And so it's possible that, I tend to believe, George H. Smith, who was a prominent atheist writer some years ago, he said, scratch the surface of a Christian and you'll find an agnostic. I think that what a whole lot of folks get out of the religious experience is just the experience of it, that sense of community, belonging, maybe just some sort of vague feeling that, I'm not all alone in the universe and therefore I don't have to have all these existential fears all the time. But when you really try to get down to the nitty-gritty of, is this stuff actually true, the same way that you would pursue a scientific claim, you'll find even a lot of practicing Christians just don't think about that end of it, or don't even really see a need to think. They're like, it's down to faith and et cetera, because that's really not the important thing, I think, to a lot of believers.
If you take a look at the full argument of what you're making, if we were kind of to distill your argument, it comes down to, I've been observing for 40 years all kinds of people talking about their belief in God, and I've seen people's lives changed, and it just doesn't seem likely to me that they could all be wrong. I mean, that seems to be the crux of your argument.
Well, and I'm not, and I appreciate the phrasing in the form of my argument. I don't know that at this point I'm trying to pose an argument. Maybe we're all, no matter what we say, we're posing arguments, but arguments in the sense of being negative here. But I understand just the logic, trying to logically come to a conclusion here. And, and the experiences, and I'm right now just isolating the conversation to just the conversations and people that I've met over 40 years, is that there are specific people that it is so radical, and
Are you saying that we don't see radical changes in people who aren't believers in that particular religion?
Well, no, it could be, and yes, you can have other religions where people have radical changes.
How about no religion?
I'm just narrowing it down, and it could be no religion. But
okay, so basically we have a situation where we're acknowledging we can see radical changes in people's lives, people who have no religion and people who have varied religions. So what is the common factor among all of those things?
What is the common factor amongst all those things?
People.
Okay. But the fact that I might have 10 different categories of people of various beliefs, all saying they have the certain experiences, that all have positive experiences on their life, that doesn't mean that, let's say
if you took
10.
all the people who won the lottery and divided them up into blocks, and some of them credited their lucky rabbit's foot, and others credited Jesus, and some just said that, hey, I got incredibly lucky, and you look at all of these different things, the common thing here is that there are people who are making claims about a cause. They can't demonstrate it, and yet we have that same effect with other claimed causes.
Okay.
So if the thing is, if the goal is that we can't determine which of them is correct, then the only rational position is not to believe any of those claims until you can. And when you earlier, what you tried to do was kind of shift the burden of proof by saying, well, you can't prove these people are wrong. Well, you're right. I can't also prove that the lottery winner who won and claims that it was because of their rabbit's foot, I can't prove that they're wrong either. That's a shifting of the burden of proof.
Okay. Is it possible that, and let's get the universe of people here in types to 10, just for example, is it possible that all of them can be wrong?
Sure.
Okay. Is it possible that 9 of them can be wrong and 1 of them can be right?
Well, it depends. See, one of the things is when you're asked, is it possible for a God to exist? There's been no demonstration that it's possible. So the only context in which we could say it's possible is that it hasn't been ruled out, which I don't find particularly compelling.
Okay, but
even if I accepted that, is it possible that one of them was correct? I'll go ahead and say, yes, it's possible, even though I don't think that that's necessarily the case. And we are still no closer to determining which of them is actually correct.
Okay.
They're making mutually exclusive claims. They're believing in different gods.
Right.
They're claiming different mechanisms. We know they can't all be right. And there doesn't seem to be any reason that they couldn't all be wrong. And nobody's demonstrated that they are right or even that they're possibly right.
And again, even if all you're using as your barometer is so-and-so had massive improvements in their condition of living, in their state of happiness, if you have those 10 different people, one of them can attribute or chooses to attribute their newfound happiness to God or their belief in God or what have you, that's still one of those 10 people. And so you have now 2 situations. You've got the fact that that a belief has positive impact on someone's life still does not say anything to whether or not it is actually true. And secondly, based on the example we're using right now, if Christianity is a thing that brings positive change to people's lives, it is but one of many things that has that effect. So if all you're looking for is to validate it is, but look at all the people who've had positive changes in their lives. Well, if you're willing to admit that positive change can come about by any number of means, then now you have Christianity is still not necessarily true, and it's not the only path to happiness. So.
Yeah, I understand.
There you go.
And I'm isolating it just to this idea of the experiences of people. And I have to say my own personal experience, but this is not about telling you about my own personal experience. I'm just trying to just take that particular approach of.
Oh, I get it.
I mean,
this is not
having had experience.
This is not anything new or foreign by any stretch of the imagination. It's something that I think all of us fall prey to from time to time, because one thing is, if somebody comes to you with a story, you want to believe them. Generally speaking, we don't make the assumption that people are lying to us. We wait. We kind of grant. The thing is, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If somebody comes to me and says, my niece just sent me pictures today of the new puppy that they went and picked up, I believe that my niece has a new puppy. I haven't seen it in person, but I've got the pictures and I trust her. If she had sent me pictures of their invisible pink unicorn, or the dragon in their garage, to go back to Sagan. I'm not going to believe that just based on the fact that my niece is generally trustworthy and she sent me a picture. I'm probably going to suspect that she's playing a joke on me to test me, because the claim itself is so far outside of what we understand about reality. And what could be further outside of what we understand about reality than some sort of thinking agent that exists outside of space and time that people are referencing as the cause for actions, when there's no mechanism ever demonstrated that these things could be real?
Yeah. Well, like I say, I can only go off of my own personal experience. And again, on this, I'd love to be able to call back again some other time to really look at it from a different approach or a different point of view. But just right now, sticking, because I know you guys got other callers, I don't want to take a lot of time. But
absolutely,
just staying with people's experiences. I mean, I'll just maybe cite one. It's just the church that I've attended for a number of years. The pastor was a medical doctor, and he established a first medical hospital in Somalia back before people were talking about Somalia back in the 60s. And just so we had a lot of relationship with people back in the old Soviet Union and communist China and the Middle East. And the Middle Easterners are just amazing me. There's one particular gentleman who was a devout, radical Shiite Muslim, and he, jihadist and dedicated to Allah, and participated in the executions, and was arrested in the Middle East in a particular journey, and imprisoned. And his story, the bottom line is that he says that Jesus personally appeared to him. And I won't even go through all the details. It was quite an amazing story. But
did Jesus tell him anything important for the rest of us? No. Like, did Jesus give him the cure to some disease, or inform us about something that we weren't aware of? Because if not, this Jesus is kind of a dick.
Yeah.
And why is he picking out one person over here to personally appear to and give this message, and the rest of us, who were once believers or not, can seek forever and get nothing, and we have loved ones being inflicted with diseases that evidently Jesus could heal. You listen to the reports, and he's laying hands on and healing the blind and the lepers and everybody else. Why the hell did that stop? Why is it that miracles seem to decay directly in opposition to our ability to investigate them? I mean, the big joke is that as soon as we got video cameras, miracles pretty much stopped.
And in that case, I would also sort of consider the source. I mean, based on your description, here you have a guy whose, I guess, life up to that point had been, he was a guy who had bad belief systems and made bad decisions and engaged in bad behaviors based on that belief system. And suddenly he shifts from this one to the other, and I'm expected to believe that, oh, well, now he's taken a rational path. Now he says Jesus came and actually spoke to him. Would have been nice for Jesus to have dropped by and have that little tete-a-tete before he went out doing all of his jihadi things that got him arrested in the first place.
The number of people who think Jesus spoke to them is kind of staggering. As soon as Jesus comes and tells me that he actually spoke to them, then I'll have some reason to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been much more impressed if Jesus had appeared to this guy before he, shot or blew up, whatever it was he shot or blew up, and said, let's talk about this shooting and blowing up things.
Why doesn't Jesus show up at a Trump rally and explain whether or not Trump is correct or the Pope is correct about who's the true Christian?
Yeah, see, so...
Yeah.
So you're getting back to, so someone had a perceived positive change in their life, and therefore now, again, no bearing on the truth value of the claim.
Yeah, this gets back to what I said earlier. I believe they have some experience and they're trying to make sense of it. I just don't accept their explanation.
May I, because you've mentioned a number of things about the gentleman, may I, fill in a little bit more of the blanks on this, because you asked the question, Matt, about, what effect did it have on him. So can I elaborate a little bit more and just tell you the story?
Well, I don't know that it makes any difference. I mean, we've heard these stories. We've heard stories about people who used to be addicted to various substances and now they're not. We've heard about people who were hateful, murdering, rapists, pick your thing, or under demonic influence or whatever, and now they're not. These stories are nothing new.
Well, okay, but
You do realize that Cat
I'd like to be able
Stevens became a Muslim, so maybe we should offer Cat Stevens' conversion story as a counter.
Yeah.
You know?
But you asked the question. You asked the question. Why would he appear to this man? And I was going to address that question.
Oh, okay.
That you asked.
Sure.
So okay. The reason that in his situation, being a devout Muslim, he would pray, throughout the day and so on, and did all the things that he was a devout Muslim should do.
Mm-hmm.
And as he was in his cell and he was praying, he said that a spirit appeared, and it was a very evil spirit, and it was just choking the life out of him. And he said he used all the things that he knew in Islam, Satan be gone, and all of the things that he could. He says it was absolutely nothing that was working. And he said suddenly he heard a voice that said, "Call on Jesus' name." And he said, if a man is drowning and he's throwing you a rope, you don't ask what the color is, you just grab onto the rope. And so he said, Jesus, if you are real, save me. And he said immediately the room went back to normal. And he said, that was not the beginning of my conversion. He said that was the beginning of my confusion. He said, why would Jesus appear to a Muslim? Why would he bother to save a Muslim? He says that was totally confusing.
I don't know. Maybe the Muslims had heard some things about Christianity and began to feel guilty for the positions that he had, and his own subconscious invented this fiction in order to give him an excuse to get out from under a more barbaric religion.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the end of it.
Well,
Not the end of it. So he prayed. But if I can go just through what he told me, and then you can respond.
Well, you
to
can,
that.
but I mean, just like as we said, testimonials are.
You got like 1 minute to wrap it up.
Yeah, dime it.
Yeah, okay. 1 minute, because I don't want to take any more. But it's just to answer your question, is that, so he prayed for 2 weeks, he fasted for 2 weeks, and he says at the end of the situation that he said, I got no answer from Allah. So he says, the heck with it. I'm going to get rid of no more Quran. I'm going to do what's good for me. He says, I did the one thing that a Muslim cannot do, is deny Allah. He says, that is the unforgivable sin. He says, it was at that point that Jesus appeared to him again.
Okay. Well, I prayed and I fasted and Jesus never showed up. And then I went ahead and did the one unforgivable sin in Christianity, depending on how you want to define apostasy. And Jesus didn't intervene at all, and Allah didn't show up, and neither did the flying spaghetti monster or anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like.
Well, okay, guys, I appreciate it. I don't want to take
appreciate it, but these testimonials, everyone has their own, and.
I understand the reason why they feel compelling to some people, because you'd like to trust people, but there's no way they should reasonably be compelling to anyone. And it is absolutely a sense of cherry picking, because you're picking this one story and ignoring all the other stories, ignoring all of the other stories that contradict it, the claims from other religions, the times when it didn't happen. It is by definition a logical fallacy.
Okay.
I mean, it's just
the
story sounds good.
If you don't care about fallacies, that's your prerogative.
Yeah.
But if you do care about fallacies, then you cannot reach the conclusion that this individual convert's story is sufficient to determine that in fact it was real and Jesus saved him. That is impossible without a fallacy.
Yeah. And
do you care about fallacies?
Well, if you could explain to me a little bit more what you're saying right there as far as about fallacies.
Do you care whether or not what you believe is true or not true?
Oh, of course.
Okay. So then you need a mechanism by which you can determine whether or not something's true, likely true, or not true, right?
Okay.
So if somebody makes an argument, you do understand that, for example, Aristotle and his band of merry logicians evaluated all 256 possible syllogistic forms to determine which ones were valid and which ones weren't, right?
Right.
Okay. And so if somebody presents an invalid syllogism, what does that mean?
It's invalid.
Yeah, but what does it mean to say that it's invalid? Does that mean they're wrong?
No, it's not true.
No, that's not what it
Well, if
means.
it's in-
Well, it means that
Okay.
if it's a
Okay,
valid
yeah.
syllogism and the premises are true, then the conclusion has to be true. But if it's
Okay,
invalid,
okay.
if it's invalid, the conclusion could be true or false. It basically means we cannot determine whether or not it's true.
Okay.
Okay? So if you have a flawed argument, it doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means that your argument does not demonstrate and cannot demonstrate that your position is correct. And so if your argument is that there is a reasonable path from this person is reporting that their life changed because Jesus appeared to them and saved them from the evil darkness, none of which is verifiable or confirmable,
Right.
there's a fallacy in there. You depending on how you frame it, you're going to end up with an argument from ignorance fallacy, or you're going to be cherry picking, or you're going to be arguing in a circular fashion. Primarily, those are going to be the big ones, because what you're doing is saying this particular story is of such quality that the conclusion I've reached is necessarily true. And you're doing that while acknowledging that similar stories happen in other causes, back to everything that we discussed before. So if you actually want to hold beliefs, you cannot do that reasonably based on fallacious arguments.
So if I had, you know, a long enough life and could talk to enough people of varying beliefs,
No.
could I conceivably come to some
No.
conclusion where there is
No, because the truth of a proposition isn't affected in any way by the number of people who believe it, how strongly they believe it, how willing they are to die for it. None of those things affect whether or not what they believe is actually true. You need evidence for it. Even if everybody on the planet believed in Jesus, that doesn't mean that Jesus is real. Just like when most people believed the earth was flat or it was the center of the universe, that doesn't make it true.
So the change of a person's life radically, claiming that as a particular cause caused it, does not. There's no number of human experiences that could ever allow you to logically come to a conclusion that there's a probability that what they're saying
Correct.
is true.
That's
You're
right.
saying that's not possible.
Correct.
not allowed to.
Causal relationships need to be demonstrated, not assumed, avowed, affirmed, attested to through inspiration or personal experience. There has to be a concrete demonstration of causality.
Okay.
And without
And
that, all
that's
you're doing
what-
is
that's what I'm-
post-hoc
excuse me,
reasoning. You're saying because
what
this
I'm-
had a
that's what I'm
positive
confused.
effect, it must be a true thing.
Yeah.
But that's
That's what
another
I'm confused.
fallacy. That's post-hoc.
Yep.
That's where I'm confused. Is that their life is the cause. You're asking for causes, and I'm looking and saying, well, their change in their life is the cause.
No, that's the effect. The change in life is the effect, not
Change in life is the effect.
the change in life may be the cause of other things, but when we want to know what is the cause of the change in their life, the only answer we have right now is we don't know.
Okay, so what I'm saying then is I see the effects of what they're saying.
Yeah.
They're saying that there's this cause, and it has had
There's
an
plenty of
effect.
people
So,
who become
yeah,
better
yeah.
people because of
Okay.
a fundamental change in their ideology. That change in the ideology becomes a cause for others. Causation is a chain. Everything that preceded it is. So we know that not telling lies or not doing drugs may be the effect of this change in their life. But now we're saying, what is the cause for the change in their life?
Okay.
Is
Okay.
it a
All
God?
right.
Is it because they had
All right.
an epiphany and took responsibility for their own life? Did they have a chemical imbalance that self-corrected, or did they get on some medication to correct? You need to demonstrate.
All right. So what you're saying then is that I can have a myriad, this incredible myriad of people who have had effects happening to them, all of them claiming that it was because of Jesus, but because even though I see all these effects, I can't come to I cannot come to a conclusion that God exists just because of the effects on their lives.
Correct.
Okay, so all right. So you're just saying logic. I guess that we come full circle. That's where I have been somewhat frustrated in listening over the past year and a half. Is that there is no way to ever come to a conclusion that God really exists based on using that method of thinking.
And yet you seem to have come to that conclusion, which is why we had this long conversation.
Okay, that's fair.
Cool. So think about it some more. We'll look forward to hearing
Yeah.
from you in the future. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you later.